Think about the last time you opened your banking app and actually felt okay about what you saw. Not relieved that you made it through the month. Not anxious about what's coming next week. Actually okay. For most people, that feeling is rare, and when it does show up, it doesn't last long. But there's a specific number where that changes. Not permanently, not magically, but structurally. And it's much smaller than most people expect. Financial advisors talk endlessly about retirement numbers, about hitting six figures, about the mythical $1 million mark. What they almost never talk about is the first real threshold. The number where your brain stops operating in crisis mode and starts operating in growth mode. That number is $22,000. And the reason it works isn't mystical. It's neurological, mathematical, and completely replicable. Here's what's actually happening when you don't have savings. Your brain isn't just stressed, it's running a different operating system. Psychologists call it scarcity mindset, and it's not just a feeling. It physically narrows your cognitive focus. Every decision gets filtered through one question. Can I survive this? You take jobs you don't want because you need the income. You stay in situations that drain you because leaving feels too dangerous. You say yes to things that cost you time and energy because you need the money. That's not a character flaw. That's your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do under financial pressure. But something shifts when that cushion reaches 3 to 4 months of real expenses, which for most Americans lands somewhere around $22,000. The scarcity filter starts to lift. Instead of asking, how do I survive until next Friday? Your brain starts asking, how do I grow this? Instead of reacting to every financial disruption, you start thinking ahead. Research consistently shows that even modest emergency savings, as little as $1,500, produces a measurable improvement in reported financial well-being. Push that to a full cushion and the shift is dramatic. Now let's talk about the math, because this is where things get genuinely interesting. Say someone is putting away $600 a month and earning a 7% average annual return. Getting to that first $22,000 takes roughly 30 months. 2.5 years of discipline and consistency. Hard, but doable. Here's what most people don't know. The second $22,000 doesn't take another 30 months. It takes about 26, because now the first $22,000 is working alongside the monthly contributions, generating its own returns. Same monthly amount, same investment strategy, same level of risk, but the timeline compressed by 4 months because money was working in the background. By the third $22,000, it compresses further. Eventually, once a portfolio reaches around $350,000, that same $22,000 can be generated in roughly 4 to 5 months through investment returns alone, without adding a single dollar of new savings. The same amount that took 2.5 years initially happens automatically. That's not theory. That's just math running forward. But here's the part that gets overlooked in almost every conversation about compound interest. The real acceleration isn't just financial, it's psychological. Because once you cross that first real threshold, you stop making decisions from desperation. And decisions made from desperation are almost always worse than decisions made from stability. Every domain of your life where you make financial decisions, career, housing, relationships, risk, starts to operate differently. Think about what it actually takes to save $22,000 starting from zero. You had to track your spending seriously. You had to say no repeatedly to things you actually wanted. You had to resist the pull of lifestyle upgrades when everyone around you was spending freely. You had to stay consistent for months on end without a dramatic payoff to point to. And here's what that process actually built. Proof. Not hope that you might be disciplined. Evidence that you are. That shift in identity is worth more than the number itself. Before that cushion exists, every unexpected expense feels like a disaster because it is one. The car needs $1,800 in repairs, and suddenly you're doing mental math about what else gets delayed this month. Your phone dies, and it's not just annoying, it's a financial problem. But with $22,000 behind you, those same events become inconveniences. The car repair is frustrating, the phone situation is annoying. Neither one derails your month or forces you into a bad decision under pressure. Something else starts happening too. You begin to notice opportunities that were always there, but previously invisible. A friend mentions they're building a small business and could use a partner. Before, you'd file it under interesting and keep walking. Now you can actually consider whether it makes sense. A used rental property shows up at a price that makes the numbers work. Before, you'd scroll past it. Now you can run the math and take it seriously. A career opportunity requires a few weeks without income during a transition. Before, that was disqualifying. Now it's just logistics. This is what people mean when they say money makes money. It's not a rigged system where wealth flows to wealth for cosmic reasons. It's that having a cushion converts opportunities from hypothetical to actual. The options were always there. The cushion makes them accessible. There's another shift that happens at this level that almost nobody talks about. You stop obsessing over small expenses and start paying attention to big ones. When you're financially thin, every purchase gets scrutinized. The name brand versus generic debate. Whether the coffee is worth it, whether you should drive somewhere or walk. These micro decisions consume real mental energy every day, but none of them actually move the needle on your financial future. The decisions that actually matter are the large ones. Where you live and what you pay for it. What you drive and how you finance it. How much automatically moves to savings before you can spend it. Where your investments are and whether they're working efficiently. These choices can swing your net worth by $50,000 or $100,000 over a decade. The coffee decision cannot. Once you have a real financial foundation, your brain naturally rebalances toward the decisions that actually matter and stops burning energy on the ones that don't. The career dimension of this is where it gets really concrete. Without savings, you're negotiating every professional situation from a position of quiet desperation. Your employer knows it. You know it. The power dynamic is real. You can't push back on something unreasonable because you need the paycheck. You can't explore other opportunities because the gap in income feels too risky. You can't ask for what you're actually worth because the worst-case scenario is genuinely scary. With $22,000 behind you, the negotiation changes. Not because you become reckless, but because you're no longer operating from fear. You can ask for the raise because if they say no, you're still fine. You can push back on something that crosses a line because one bad outcome isn't a crisis. You can take a few weeks to find the right next opportunity instead of jumping at the first available option. And here's the counterintuitive part. You often don't need to use any of that. The simple fact of not being desperate changes how you carry yourself. People notice. It compounds. Now let's talk about the mistake that wipes this out for most people. They hit $22,000, feel that shift, and immediately interpret the feeling as permission. They've been disciplined for 2 years. They tell themselves they've earned something. So the vacation happens. The car upgrade gets justified. The home renovation suddenly feels reasonable. And 6 months later, they're back near zero, wondering why building wealth feels impossible when they're clearly capable of saving. That $22,000 is not a reward. It's a foundation. The difference matters enormously. A reward gets spent. A foundation gets built on. The psychological shift you feel when you cross that threshold is real, but it's a signal that you're ready to build, not that you've arrived somewhere you can relax. The clearest example of where this plays out is transportation. Most people significantly underestimate what their vehicles actually cost them over a lifetime. When you add car payments, insurance, fuel, maintenance, registration, and depreciation, the average American spends somewhere between $700 and $900 per month on transportation. Over 35 years, that's well over $350,000, often more than $400,000 when you factor in the returns that money could have generated if invested instead. A $32,000 car isn't just $32,000. At a 7% average annual return over 25 years, that same amount invested becomes roughly $175,000. You're not choosing between a car and $32,000. You're choosing between a car and $175,000. That reframe doesn't mean you never buy a car. It means you understand what you're actually trading. And once you understand the real trade, the decision looks different. The person in the reliable used car isn't making a sacrifice. They're making a strategic choice. This lens extends to every major financial decision. Housing, education, recurring expenses, lifestyle choices. Not in an obsessive way that drains the enjoyment out of everything, but in a way that creates genuine intention. When you understand opportunity cost clearly, you often realize you don't actually want a lot of what you thought you wanted. The bigger apartment sounds nice, but is it worth delaying financial independence by 4 years? Some things are worth it. Most aren't. Once you actually run the numbers. Here's something that doesn't get said enough about this threshold. The relationship between savings and spending psychology is bidirectional. Owning less and saving more creates financial security. But financial security also reduces the psychological pressure that drives most overconsumption in the first place. A lot of spending is emotional. It temporarily relieves the anxiety that financial insecurity creates. Build real security and the compulsion to spend often quiets on its own. The virtuous cycle runs in both directions. $22,000 won't make you wealthy on its own, but it will fundamentally change the conditions under which you make every financial decision going forward. It changes your brain, your career negotiations, your risk tolerance, and your relationship with opportunities. It's the difference between reacting to your financial life and designing it. The foundation doesn't build itself, but once it's there, everything that comes after it gets easier. Start building it today. Your future self is already waiting on the other side of that number. If this reframed how you think about where you're headed, drop a comment below. Like the video if it was useful, and subscribe if you want to keep going deeper on how money actually works.